and I did this. Wow. Thank you, Doc. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. I'm Reverend Beverley Strutt. I am the Senior Minister and Spiritual Director here at this magnificent Center for Spiritual Living, East Hawaii. Please look around and see the faces that are here today. You guys are magnificent, magnificent. And also a special welcome to everybody joining us online. I think I might have some AZ peeps that have come in to join us on this magnificent, beautiful Easter Sunday. Wow. And also, we acknowledge all of the other faith-based traditions around the world that are celebrating their high holidays right now. It's kind of ironic, isn't it, that we're all doing the same thing at the same time, and I believe it's springtime. It's that time of just coming together for the renewing. It's the time of rebirth. And this is a very, very joyous occasion, and I do begin it, and I'm going to need Kleenex. Anybody? I do begin it with a sad news that the original founder, spiritual director of New Vision Center for Spiritual Living, the church that grew me, transitioned last night. So there is definitely a way to lean in to this idea of eternal life, to lean into this idea of how we go through the world, how we are in this world, and what it is that we do. And so I'm extremely grateful for this beloved person, for she is still created a magnificent place that is growing. They let me go, but they're still growing ministers to go out into the world and teach this magnificent teaching. Her name is Reverend Joyce Murphy, and we honor her right now. Thank you. So, you know, on that note, I am bringing back a piece of humor from last year because I think we need it. Thank you, my beloved. I think we need it because this is Easter. This is joyful. And this joke actually came from Palm Sunday. It was Palm Sunday, but because of a sore throat, 8-year-old Billy, I'm sorry, Billy, but it was the 8-year-old version of you, stayed home from church. And when the family returned home, they were carrying several palm fronds, and Johnny asked them what they were for. People lined the streets with them to herald Jesus' return, his father told him, and they held him over his head as he walked by. And Billy goes, geez, the one Sunday I don't go and he shows up. You gotta love it. You gotta love it from the voice of the child, the voice of those that are just coming forward to know this world. But it is the time of renewal, rebirth, the springtime. And we have this wonderful thing from Joyce Rupp. She said, every year it happens. Earth shakes her sleepy head, still a bit rented and dull, and feels new life stirring. Every year cocoons give up their treasures, fresh shoots push through brown leaves, seemingly dead branches shine with green, and singing birds find their way home. And every year, the dull and dead in us meets our Easter challenge. To be open to the unexpected, to believe beyond our security, to welcome God in every form, and to trust our own greening. That was from Joyce Rupp, Out of the Ordinary. So renew, rebirth, resurrection. Yeah, we're going there today. But let's not confuse resurrection with resuscitation. It's not resuscitation of the old way of being. It's not resuscitation of the old body. It's not resuscitation of the old at all. But it is resurrection. Resurrection, going back to seeing things anew, to view the new, to see the new in it. That's where we're going today. A new way of being. So every Easter and every Christmas, ministers like myself go through this drama of how do we tell the same story again. You've all heard the stories. You've all heard the Easter story. You've read it in many different versions. You've seen it. You've heard it over and over again. You've actually wanted to push it aside because it no longer resonates with you. But here is what I know. Don't listen to the words. Dig into the fabric, the threads of the story. Because in those threads of the story is the meaning, is the place where we go for interpretation. And every year, we get to bring up something new. How is that possible? Because the threads, the fabric of these stories lend themselves to what is going on right now. That's why we can do it. So this year, I have to give a little credit, because I like to do that, to Rob Bell. If anybody's ever gone and watched any of his stuff or listened to him, he has an amazing take on the Bible. Very, very profound, very, very, very sacred, but profound and just wonderful. And the other one is to the TV series called The Chosen. If you have not yet watched it, you might want to go see it after today. I will tell you that it is something that, and you know, I'm a die-hard religious scientist, folks. You know me. I stand in the science of this teaching over and over again. But you know, we have the law and we have the love. The Chosen shows you the love that came through this person called Jesus of Nazareth. And it is, woo, it really can shift and move you. So I'm going to do a little take on this, and what I would like to do with this story today is I'd like to take it back to a little bit of the setting, the historical setting at the time. So we all know it was back in the 1st century AD, and the world pretty much at that time was run by the Roman Empire. I'm sure there were others, but let's just keep it to what I know, all right? It was run by the Roman Empire. And the heads and the people in that, it was run very much in a very aggressive, warlike manner. And they had the Caesars, the kings, the leaders. And the Caesars were known as the Son of God. They were known as the Son of God, and their job was to bring peace and prosperity to the land. Really? Peace and prosperity? With the way they were doing it, crushing everybody in their way, stomping on them, killing left, right, and center. If you didn't agree with them, you were out. But you weren't just out, you were out. You were done. You were gone. There was no room for any resistance in this world. They ran it, they crushed, they taxed to people when they were absolutely with nothing left, and it didn't matter. This was their way. This was their way to peace and prosperity. Yeah. Now remember, I said right in the beginning that in the fabric of these stories, it's always easy for interpretation because it is relevant today. So I'm just saying, I'll just drop that one over there. We can let that be. So anyway, so here we are in this world, this time of fear, of oppression, of being afraid to speak and say or be anything else out of the ordinary. Anytime you walk down the street, you were afraid that you might step out of line, do anything. The next thing you'd be hauled off and you would be dead. It was also a time when the way people were put to death was on a stake. That stake was called a crucifix. Just let that be. Right there. This was the normal way of dealing with people that were in resistance to the way of the time, the way of Caesar, the anger, the fear, the devastation, and the destruction and the crushing of literally the soul. Yeah. You know what? You guys should go ahead and put on your smocks and put on your sandals, your rope sandals, and just feel into that feeling of what it must be like to have walked the streets, the dusted streets during that time with that kind of fear behind you. Not knowing 1 second to the other if you'd ever make it back to your home. Then what happened? Jesus came along. Yeah, Jesus came along with a whole new story, a whole new way of being, a whole new thought pattern, a way of being in the world where we can come together, be with each other, be of assistance and help and support and love. I would say that that was maybe the true way to peace and prosperity. So he comes along with his teachings, quietly at first, gathering people around him. His apostles gently came around him. And slowly it grew. The word grew. Yes, he performed miracles. Sometimes I think those miracles were just what I call sometimes a party trick. A trick to get the attention. A trick to go, look in this direction. Have a look what's going on over here. This thing that we believe is the only way of being in the world can change. You might not have been able to walk for your whole life. From birth, you could not walk. And he stood there and said, get up, pick up your bed and walk. And he did. All right? This is a story. Did that actually happen? We have no idea. Does it matter? No, it doesn't, because behind it all in the fabric of the story is this idea that anything is possible with love. Anything is possible with love. This is the way to go. This is a new way of being. And slowly, the masses started to gather, and they gathered, and they gathered, and the apostles were the first ones that were kind of like, yeah, you know, this is kind of cool, but this is scary, because they knew too that they were going to be close to the execution if they were caught as his followers. And then he did his first sermon, where he spoke the words of all the teachings that we hear, all of those stories. Don't forget, don't get caught up in the words because you don't know which edition you were reading. Go deep into the fabric, follow the threads, follow the DNA of the story, because in there lies the love, lies the new way of being. And he literally said, no longer do we say an eye for an eye, which was most definitely the Caesar's way. An eye for an eye, absolutely. He said, no, if someone strikes you, turn the other cheek. Let them strike the other as well. Because you know what? There is love there. There is forgiveness there. There's a new way of being in the world where we are not reactive, where we are responsive, and we respond from that place of love. We still use it today. The stories are still good today. They work all the time. What do you think the Romans were thinking? They were like, we've got to get this guy out of town. Because the followers grew and grew and grew. And there's always, no matter how great and powerful you are, when we bring people together in community and mass, we know that we can change things. There could be mass uprisings. So their way of doing it was to go, no, we're going to have to take him out. We're going to have to move him away from all of this. In fact, even the Pharisees, those that were his teachers, those that were leading his religion of the time, were like, no, this is against the law. You can't do stuff on the Sabbath. You can't do this, you can't do that. It's the law, the law, the law, the law, the law. In fact, we often talk about the Old Testament as being the law and the New Testament being the love. Well, it's not necessarily how we say law and love in religious science, but it was definitely based in laws and the New Testament based in love. Two different ways of being in the world. So what did they do? They went ahead and got him, dragged him off, nailed him to a cross, which was the normal way of doing things at the time. I hate to tell you. It wasn't a uniqueness in this way. Nailed him to the cross, and he died on the cross. The end. But was it the end? No, it wasn't the end. No, not at all, it wasn't the end. Now, You can believe the resurrection story as it is told, where they rolled away the stone and he was no longer there. Absolutely. We don't know. Did somebody steal the body? Was it quantum physics where the particles evaporated? I don't know. We don't know. But that is not the point. That is not the issue. That is not where you want your focus to be. The focus is on Caesar did not win, because love resurrected again to walk the earth eternally. Yes, yes, yes. Therein lies the crux of the resurrection story. It's not about a resuscitation of a body of the old. It is a resurrection of a new way of being in the world, across the whole world. There are people that want to say the resurrection and the death on the cross was all about your individual sin. If that works for you, that is fine. But if you think about the resurrection as being an affirmation that a new way of being in the world is happening, and it is eternal, you cannot crush it, Caesar. You cannot put this down, because love is our innate nature. Love is who we are. Love is how we want to be in the world. We're going to crush it with love. And the resurrection allows us to know that no matter what Caesar's way did, we have Jesus' way, the way of love. And Caesar could not kill it. Therein lies the story of the resurrection, a way of being in the world. This is what we want to do. This is what we want to go out and do. This is where we now take this into how do we do resurrection in the world? How do we wake up in the morning in a rebirth, in a new way, that we are not allowing ourselves to get caught up in the crushing and the anger and the fear. The fear that drives so much of our anxiety. No. Can we come from love? Can we do what Jesus did? Absolutely, folks. Absolutely. Jesus was the example, not the exception. You know, so often people say they believe in Jesus, that Jesus is the way. And that's beautiful. Christianity, I support them exactly where they're at, because as long as you have faith, I'm good. You know, as long as you got something going on, I'm good. But what I like to say is Jesus' way is the way. That is the way. Not necessarily Jesus, because we believe that God is within, so we don't have to go through a man in order to connect with God. But if we follow Jesus' way of connection with God, we're good. We're golden, man. We're on our way to do it. This is where we want to go. We want to follow the way of Jesus, the love, the forgiveness, the compassion, the kindness, the sharing, all of these things, all of these qualities of the divine that he was living every minute of every day. We can do it. Of course we can do it. What does it take for us to do it? What does it take for us to actually be that way in the world? Not a whole lot, folks. Not a whole lot. It's just called choice. You get to be in choice. You get to show up in the moment and choose how you want to be. I'm telling you, when you bring that to your foremind and you remind yourself when you wake up in the morning, let's take the way of love today. Every time something shows up unlike it, you're going to bristle on your back, let me tell you. I know that bristle. I know, I can feel it. And then there's a drop into the heart and you go, how can I do this differently? How can I show up in the way of love not give in to the way of Caesar. Because that's easy too. There's a lot of support for the way of Caesar out there. There's a lot of support. But when we go the way of love, we're bringing a balance back into the world. We can do this. We can be that light that is in the world. So, what is one of the wonderful qualities that can move us forward in this? And I love it because, you know, my students from this last class are going to say, yes, we know this. It's called grace. Grace. And you go, what? Grace? Is that the prayer we say before dinner? No, no, no. Grace. A way of being. Grace is the way of being in oneness with the divine, of feeling the wholeness of the divine. Grace is in every step, every look, every smile, everything you do is grace. In fact, grace is seeing the world as God would see it. That is also called the Christ consciousness. Seeing the world as God sees it. The thing itself that created it. How do you think God sees the world? How do you think God sees you and you? With a big-ass grin on its face. It's like, this is a magnificent expression of the divine. This is love. This is everything. Oh, what was that misstep? Oh, nothing. Come on, let's step back in line. Let's be love again. Because we are human. It is natural that there will be detours. It's natural that we will deviate. It doesn't change who we are. It doesn't change that we are brilliant expressions of the divine. It doesn't change that the fabric of who we are is love. And we get to come from that place every minute of every day. We get to choose the way of Jesus. And one of the ways that we walk out grace is through praise. We raise and praise each other. We raise and praise ourselves. Don't forget, everything starts with you. How do you feel about yourself? Joan said it there. First thing she had to do was forgive herself. So we raise and praise ourselves as we raise and praise those around us. Grace, besides seeing the world as God sees it, the word praise means to express approval, to glorify, to appraise as good. When you express approval of yourself or others, you are glorifying the divine in yourself and others. Always you can resurrect or bring back to notice the good, the divinity in people and the situations through praise. Say to yourself often and affirm it, bless you. Say to yourself often and affirm it for others too. Through the power of Christ in me, my life can be as wonderful as I want it to be. Through the power of Christ in me, my life can be as wonderful as I want it to be. You will be surprised how this simple, delightful way of thinking will resurrect, bring back to notice, restore life, restore your good. This is from Catherine Ponder, The Prospering Power of Love. So what do? We just do it. It's not that hard. We just do it. We wake up in the morning, we make a choice inside ourselves to be the light, to be the wonderment, to be that place in the world that truly is the magnificence of the way of Jesus as he spoke to humanity, to being different right here, right now, to gathering together, to be kind, to non-violence, to just sharing the love, to non-discrimination, to putting an end to it, to stepping forward into the truth of who we are, the beings of love, a new way of being in the world. So I'm going to, in closing today, I'm going to read a little piece from Dr. Ernest Holmes, the founder of our teaching. he says this: Jesus was either the great exception or the great example. If he were the great exception, there is little we can do other than admire the spiritual attitude from which he spoke. If he were the great example, we should follow his teachings and seek to make it practical in our everyday living. We shall not understand his teaching unless we keep in mind that he was placing himself in a relationship towards God that all men should assume. He was demonstrating to those of his day, that to those of our day as well, that there is a spiritual power which we may use. In no way did he intimate that God gave him a power that is withheld from others. He said, "What I do shall you do also, and greater things than these shall you do." It is indeed a good thing for us to reevaluate and reemphasize the whole teachings of this mastermind individually and collectively. He said, "I am the light of the world." And Jesus was not referring to his human personality, but to the principle inherent in generic man, in generic human. They who follow this inner principle shall have the light of life, for this principle is life. You are the light of the world. Don't forget it. Today is a day where we honor the rebirth, the relook, the returning to who we truly are. Magnificent, individualized expressions of the divine, filled up and overflowing with love and compassion and a desire to be this love in the world in every which way. I know this of you, for you all are this already. So it is.